should be V, yes, and all the Havdalah blessings are in there, even though we're not that part yet. So story first, Okay, I have a slightly different kind of story tonight. It is actually based on a real person, but it's a Talmudic story. So it's one of the ancient rabbis. Now, this takes place during a real period of time, which is during Roman times. The Romans were not real fond of the Jews teaching Torah, partly because it usually led to revolts, and the Romans were very unhappy with anybody who revolted. So this is about Shimon ben Yochai, who ended up living in a cave for 13 years, hiding from the Romans. And what happened was, of course, since he was a holy rabbi, there ended up being a carob tree and a water in it, so that he and his son, who were living with him, were able to survive on that. So it starts with, they've been in this cave for quite a while already. So Shimon ben Yochai and his son sat across from each other in their cave. They were supposed to be eating lunch, but Rabbi Shimon was like always studying, because that was his whole life, was Torah study. His son, whose name was Elazar, said to him, "Carob stick?" "No, thank you," his father said. Elazar met a moment past. "Mashed carob?" "No, thank you," his father said. "Some carob juice, then?" Elazar couldn't help smiling when he was saying it, but his father looked annoyed at him, saying, "Don't try to be funny. Has it ever occurred to you that I'm missing eating something other than carob most days for day in and day out for 11 years? But Father Elazar, don't you think the emperor will have forgiven you by now? Can't we go home? I miss mother. I miss home. I miss food. I miss everything." "I know some," Rabbi Shimon said quietly, "but no one speaks out against the Roman Empire and goes unpunished. We should be grateful. God gave us this place to hide. We do have a carob tree so that we won't starve, and we have a spring of water so that we have water to drink. Without those miracles, we wouldn't even be alive. So I'm going to continue to be grateful and pray and study as long as God gives me the privilege of doing so. And you should be grateful too." Rabbi Shimon paused for a moment to catch his breath, and then he added more gently to his son, "Now, son, let's not talk about this anymore. It's time to rest and be glad. We still have a drop of wine left over for Shabbat, don't we? And after all, what is Shabbat without some wine?" And he smiled for the first time in a long time. And so they spent their days eating carob, praying and studying in the morning, and telling stories at night. Once a year, they would have visitors, when Rabbi Shimon's students would come disguised as hunters, even though the only thing they were hunting was some learning from him. And while they would bring in and sit in and listen to Rabbi Shimon's wisdom, Elazar would devour the wine and the bread that they brought and any kind of news, because he hungered for what was going on in the outside world. After all, he was just living in a cave. They didn't see anyone else but these students once a year. Then one evening when it was dark, Elazar was startled out of his sleep by the sound of footsteps. "Couldn't be the students back so soon, could it? Father, did you hear that?" he whispered. His father said, "Who's there?" But there was no answer. The footsteps stopped at the cave. An old man stepped inside, and a voice spoke, "I have come to tell Shimon ben Yochai that the emperor is dead. You are free to leave the cave and return home." Elazar stared at the moment for a moment, and then he jumped up and started dancing, because he was really, how wonderful that they'd be able to finally go home. But his father didn't move. "Who are you?" he asked. "Someday you will know," the man said, and he turned on his heels and disappeared like that. Elazar was ready to leave the cave right then, but his father wasn't in a rush. First he did his prayers, then he packed up his holy books and a bit of carob. Then he took his first steps outside in more than 11 years. Well, you can imagine the sun hitting and blinding them, because it was too much. In fact, everything seemed too much for him. Well, Elazar was running ahead and picking berries and smiling and looking at everything, and so thrilled to be outside the cave. Rabbi Shimon was having trouble, and bird noise was too much, and the colors of the leaves were too bright, and you could see some farmers who were sitting and they were eating their lunch and laughing and just idling there, and he couldn't stand it. Look at them, Eleazar, Rabbi Shimon said. Look at how they use their freedom, thinking only of their bellies. They care nothing about feeding their minds, or they could be spending their days studying God's holy words, and they don't even have a cave in it. Perhaps they would if only God gave them carob too, Eleazar said with a laugh. But who would grow food for the rest of the people? But his father didn't pay attention to his words. He looked around disapprovingly at everyone and just got angrier and angrier and angrier that they were doing anything else but studying. And he got so angry, it was almost as if he looked at them, his looks would have set them all on fire. And that's when the old man appeared again and spoke harshly. It seems that Shimon ben Yochai is not ready to leave his cave. He needs to remember how to appreciate everything that God has created. He will return to his cave for another year and study how to live in the world. So the two men went back to the cave, and this time it was Eleazar to be the teacher. He brought his father figs and dates so he could relearn the taste of the other food. And they would go out on a hillside and watch the sheep gazing. And Eleazar brought a blanket made from that wool to help keep his father warm and to show his father that the shepherds were needed to be able to create clothing for people. And every Friday, Eleazar would go out and bring them back wine so they could properly welcome Shabbat. Then finally, it was time to leave the cave again. As they set out, Rabbi Shimon took a deep breath of fresh air. This time, he praised the trees and the farms and the animals on their way out. This time, he stopped to talk to the laughing farmers out in the field. You there, Rabbi Shimon said. What are you working on, please? Tell me what makes you so happy. The men looked up startled. We're harvesting, of course, holding up a big cluster of beautiful purple grapes. Who wouldn't be happy with grapes like that? And don't forget, the other farmer said, when they're turned into wine, they'll make you even happier. And both farmers started laughing again. Rabbi Shimon bit him one of the grapes, and a smile spread across his face. That's right, he told Eleazar. What would Shabbat be without wine? So he had to kind of learn to live in the world again. So I've heard versions of that story where actually it wasn't just that his eyes were blazing with anger, but they blazed with anger so much they actually did set things on fire. So that's one of the versions from the Talmud that has it, but they're trying to, I guess, tone it down a little bit. All right, so Havdalah blessings are there. I don't believe we had anybody new come since I put them in now, so we should be good with that. All right, and I'm going to light my candle to make sure that my candle lights first. Oops. No. Okay. And I jinxed myself there. There we go. That one. Okay, we're going to start with the blessing over the wine. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen borei peri hagafen. Die die da 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 die 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 da 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 die 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 da 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 die die da da die da 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 die. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei minei v'samim. Borei minei v'samim. Die die da 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 die 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 da 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 die 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 Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei me'orei ha'esh borei me'orei ha'esh die die da 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 die 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 da 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 die 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 da 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 die die da da die da da die Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh lecho ben or lechoshech Bayom Hashvi'i l'sheshet tameh hamaseh Baruch atah Adonai hamavdil ben kodesh l'chol. And as we say goodbye to Shabbat, since we're going from the holy to the daily thing, that's why we have things for the spices to remind us of that, to take sort of Shabbat with us through the week so we don't forget it. And then those who wish, you have your candle, you put it out in your wine or grape juice or whatever. And we continue with Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu HaTishbi, Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu HaGiladi, Bimhera v'yameinu, Yavo Aleinu, Mashiach ben David, Mashiach ben David. And I invite you to unmute so you can join your voices with me and drown me out. Shavua Tov. Shavua
Tov,
Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, Shavua Tov, a good week, a week of peace. May gladness reign, joy increase. Good week, may gladness reign and joy increase. Next Friday night is the secular New Year. So there will be a choice of being, at least at this moment, an in-person services with a little bit of some sort of,
she's going to do the toast from the Bima, assuming that because that fewer people will come because of COVID, but there will still be a chance to have to take something with you after the service.
Okay.
The services will be in the sanctuary,
right?
For those who
are
on
attend.
Zoom.
So
and on Zoom, of course,
right?
And Facebook.
Next Saturday is also everybody. You can sleep in late. You can sleep in late on that. There's no Torah study, but we will be back here for Havdalah next Saturday night.
Yeah.
So for those on Facebook, Shavua Tov, and we will say goodbye to them. And those who want to hang around for a while, we can have a chance to chat. Thank you, Evan. Let's see.